Hey, you're listening to the Bandwagoners. My name is Andy Cole.
And my name is Justin Boniface. We're bringing you news and notes from around the NHL.
So, bud, last show of the year.
Yeah, for the regular season anyways.
Yeah, it flew by, eh?
Yeah, it did.
It's unreal.
Well, that's what happens when you only have 48 games, right?
Yeah, this is true. So yeah, guys, tonight we're exclusively going to be doing a season wrap-up. We'll be going over the predictions of what we said in the first show of how we thought teams would do. We'll go through the standings and say how they finished. There are a couple bubble teams, a couple asterisks that might change in the next few days, just because technically, I guess Sunday would be the last game. Well,
only for Boston
and Montreal because of the marathon bombing. That game got
Boston
changed.
and Ottawa.
It was Boston and Ottawa.
Yeah, it'll affect Montreal in the standings, but
yeah.
If Montreal continues the way they're going, they don't have a chance for the division anyway. So
for the most part, Saturday is the last game of the season for most teams. So only a couple games left for most of the teams. So pretty much everything we're saying tonight will probably stick. Although obviously there might be a couple changes on the next show. The next show is going to be exciting. That's going to be our playoff prediction show. This is what every hockey fan lives for, the playoffs. And obviously, Justin and myself can't be more excited to be doing the show for you guys.
It's almost too fast. It's almost like I kind of want to savor it, but we're 2 games away, and here we go. You just got to jump in, right? Get ready.
But it's been one hell of a season. I mean, a lot of great stories. I mean, go back and listen to the previous 12 shows and just hear what we've had to say. I mean, there's been a lot of really interesting storylines this year. It's been a very exciting year for hockey. Obviously, it started a little bit slow. I mean, the first 10 games for most teams, they were filling each other out still. Obviously, they didn't have training camps really, or a lot of mental preparation, which might explain some players' lapses this year, because not everyone performed as well as they should have.
And some unexpected players near the top as well.
Yeah, which we'll get into. Right before we do that, I guess, we're not going to bother with bandwagon picks this week, because there are only 2 games left.
Well, we can go over that it was a tie.
Yes, the last bandwagon pick of the season, we ended up tying. I picked Vancouver, and they went 3-1. Thank God. I was really nervous after that Dallas game that I might have jinxed them, but they did okay.
Yeah.
You picked Washington, who also went 3-1.
Yeah.
Largely due to the outstanding play of Alex Ovechkin.
Yeah, exactly. So he kept tearing it, and is actually now leading the race for the Maurice Richard Trophy with 31 goals on the year. So
we're going to be doing a trophy prediction show probably at the end of the playoffs. But I mean, between yourself and myself, we're saying John Tavares, Alex Ovechkin. Who do you think gets the MVP there?
For the Art Ross for most points.
Oh, I'm saying who do you
MVP.
Who do you think is going to be MVP?
Yeah, for sure. So I would go with Tavares, strictly because somebody didn't tell John Tavares that the Islanders aren't supposed to be in the playoffs.
He's carried that team
all the way, and you could argue the same for Alexander Ovechkin, but realistically, Ovechkin's a pure goal scorer, and that team is way deeper and has solid young goaltending, whereas you could say the Islanders are on a bubble in a lot of areas, and depth not there.
Ovechkin's found his form, which he had a few years ago. Tavares, he's found the form that everyone predicted he would have. I mean, he was drafted along the lines of a Crosby. Guys thought he would be in that mold of a real game-changing kind of player. Maybe not quite at the level of Crosby, but he'd be up there, with the Crosbys and the Stamkoses and the Ovechkins. And this was his coming out year, man.
And he's there.
He's there now. He's completely enforced his will on people, and players respect him now. They know who he is. People aren't questioning if John Tavares can do it anymore. This kid can play, and he's without a doubt one of the top players in the game right now. And I'm so glad he's Canadian, because, man, that's going to be a great Olympics if we end up going.
I know. It's almost a shame Ovechkin is leading the goal race, because after that, it's 6 Canadians in a row.
Oh, it's going to be... the Olympics are going to be insane. All right, so let's jump into it. East Coast first. In first place, the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah.
Not really a surprise in the sense that it's the Penguins. And, when you got Crosby and Malkin both rolling, and they both had great years this year... Not that surprising. I don't know if either of us necessarily said they'd be first overall, but they'd be challenging for the top 3 spots.
Yeah, we definitely mentioned the President's Trophy during their conversation.
Yeah, they would definitely be challenging with that roster that they have, and that was even before all the insane trades that they did. That was the beginning of the year.
Oh yeah, they got stacked through the trade deadline.
Now you add Murray, Iginla, and Morrow.
Morrow, yeah, it's just absolutely nuts, that roster. So not much to say about the Penguins other than they're going to go deep, and didn't they win successful.
They went on an 8-game winning streak after Malkin and Crosby both got injured.
Yeah.
And they still went on a winning streak because of the play of Iginla and Morrow.
That stretch of teams that they faced were a little bit weaker than the rest of their schedule, but nonetheless,
it makes Shearer look like a genius.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the guys that he brought in to do well, Jokinen as well has been having great success in Pittsburgh. So, yeah, I mean, we both predicted they'd have a great year, and we were both right there.
Yeah.
And they definitely will be challenging for the Cup this year.
Hard to be wrong on that. I can't see anybody calling Pittsburgh not making the playoffs.
Not really
at the
patting
beginning of
yourself
this
on the
year.
back there. I mean, that was just like, oh, Pittsburgh's doing well. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. The rest of the East changes that up, though. I mean, like, next we have the Boston Bruins, which was, again, predictable.
Yep, second place.
However, they are tied in points with Montreal right now. So
this is true.
That's the surprise team in that scenario.
Yeah.
But Boston had an excellent year. Goaltending by Tuukka Rask. Everyone, a lot of people were kind of worried just based on the absence of Tim Thomas. But I, and I think Andy agreed with me at the beginning. That
Rask is an incredible goalie.
Well, not only that, Tim Thomas
he was a Vezina nominee, don't forget, just a few years ago.
Yeah, but it's not even about Rask. It's about Tim Thomas. And that's the thing, is like when you get rid of a star goalie, people freak out. But what you have to look at is who Tim Thomas was in the dressing room. And he was an agitator. Like, his morale wasn't necessarily positive for that room. And
cancer,
when you
if you will.
remove that from your dressing room, it's only going to add to your success, especially when you can be confident with the goaltending you have.
He is the cancer, and I am the, what cures cancer?
Nothing, Andy. Nothing cures cancer.
Damn it.
Radiation. Lots and lots of radiation.
So yeah, Boston finishing second. We both predicted they'd do really well, so we were both right there. Not a surprise that Boston had a good year. Although surprising, Lucic, he actually got cut a few times in the last week. He's not had a very good year.
I'm a little bit happy to see that, because a few times I've kind of said that he's a little bit overrated.
I like Lucic.
You do quite a lot, and you always ask me, like, you'd have him on your team if you were a GM, you'd have him. I'd be like, no, actually I wouldn't, and I stand by that. And
still think you're lying.
This year especially, because look at him. If he was on my team this year,
I think he could be a guy that suffered maybe from the lockout. I predict he'll have a bounce back year next year.
No excuses, Andy.
He'll have a bounce back year next year. I predict that. I'm calling it now. Bounce back year next year for Lucic. And hey, let's not forget, Lucic in the playoffs, man. He's a playoff kind of player. He very well might turn it on in the playoffs.
The thing about Lucic is he's an excellent skater, and he's massive. Like, he's like, whether or not you attempt to check him, he will go through you.
Yeah, he is a brick feces house.
Yeah.
In the cleanest way possible.
Kidding. Like, you're barely going to get away with that one.
Oh, I know. Censor's calling me tomorrow. Yeah. Did you say feces on the air? It's scientific. Look it up. Okay, third place, we got the Washington Capitals. That was a surprise for both of us. We both said, well, no, that's not true. I said they'd be a bubble team this year. You said they wouldn't make it.
I don't know. I feel like that's a surprise for me. Like, I feel like I would have called them a bubble team or better, just strictly based on...
So you want to change that? You want to say bubble now?
Changing it from what? I don't remember.
Well, I was saying you said no.
Oh, okay.
So we'll say
I said yes only because at the beginning of the season, I can't picture myself saying that the Islanders or the Panthers or maybe the Hurricanes would have been the only one, or the Jets doing, or the Lightning.
Now
you're better than Washington.
You're saying Washington. You predicted Washington would make it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Jesus. Okay.
Like the only team that I would have predicted in front of Washington is Carolina. The only reason I would have called Washington a bubble team, which is definitely possible, is because only one team from that stupid division makes the playoffs.
I know.
So it's so embarrassing, and I have to say this every single show. I'm stoked for realignment.
Yeah, this argument will be a moot point, I should say, next season when realignment happens. Washington will get out of that god awful division.
Yeah.
So you were right there. You said Washington would make it.
I think so. I could be very well wrong, but in any case,
I said they'd be a bubble this year. I thought they had a good shot of making it. I mean, any team that has Ovechkin has a shot at making it, but I don't know. I thought maybe this year they'd falter a little bit. I was questioning Adam Oates and whether or not he'd be able to bring enough to the table.
I agree with that. I also said negative things about Adam Oates in the first show.
And at the beginning of the year, or even for the first half of the season, Washington wasn't even near a playoff spot. They were struggling, and it was really largely due to the re-emergence of Alex Ovechkin, who goes and scores like 23 goals in 22 games.
Which gives him the right to contend for the Hart Trophy.
Oh, absolutely. So I think Ovechkin is largely the large reason why they're doing so well and why they're in a playoff spot. Neither of us predicted that they would be third, but remember, they're third because they're in a really weak conference. I mean, they're still far behind in points from most of the teams ahead of them, or even behind them.
They've clinched. They've got 2 games left. They clinched because the Islanders lost. They're 5 points up on the the Islanders are in division. They're 5 points up on the Jets. So it's like just an absolute joke.
So I mean, It's not that surprising they made the playoffs, but it is surprising they did as well as they did, largely due to the fact that Ovechkin found his game. So I think we were both a little wrong there.
Yep.
Pleasantly surprised by Washington. I don't know how far they'll make it into the playoffs, but it's great to see them in it. It's great for the city, and it's great to see Ovechkin finally come to form.
We're looking at Washington Islanders right now. I'd give that to the Caps. in a heartbeat.
Oh, the MVP battle, eh?
And the only other possibility, pretty much, is Washington-Toronto, and that's if Toronto loses their next two. So
yeah, and Toronto-Washington, I think Toronto would hand them their lunch.
physically, I would say yeah, but there's no consistent goaltending, especially as far as postseason is concerned in Toronto.
It's true.
Ovechkin, like if put a nervous Reimer in net in game one and let Ovechkin at him, it's over.
True.
It's over. And you can't just, and Ovechkin's not like Crosby, you can't just smoke him and he's out.
Yeah.
Ovechkin will smoke you back. Like Ovechkin is a power forward.
Yeah.
Like you don't fuck with him.
Oh.
Might have to edit that one out. We'll see what happens.
No, it's okay. We can get away with one this show.
One? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
You got everybody gets one.
Everybody gets one. It's okay. I believe in the U.S. you can't get an R rating unless you say it twice. If it's used once, then they stick the 14A on there. So
okay, sweet.
We'll see what we can do.
Sweet, awesome. Okay, Montreal. Yeah. So, before we go to Montreal. So, I mean, this is why I love the playoffs because you're right. I mean, Washington Islanders, Washington, Toronto. Who knows? Like. You can give that series to any of those teams. Like Toronto or Washington could easily win that one. Washington Islanders, it's going to be close, man. Either of those series will be really, really close.
Yeah,
and that's often the way it is. The first round of the playoffs is usually the best round for most years. And fourth place.
Montreal
We got your beloved Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah.
You obviously said they'd make it. I predicted they would make it, but they'd be a bubble team. Like
even I didn't predict a home ice advantage. Like I was thinking 6-5 was.
I was thinking they'd probably. Was thinking they'd probably be floating between 6th and 8th. I had no idea they'd turn it on the way that they did. I mean, your coach Julian is just not Julian. Sorry. Oh God! Imagine Julian.
Yeah.
Your coach Terrien, the other French Canadian. Your coach Terrien. He's just
because there's only two.
Because there's only two. There's like nine French Canadian coaches in the NHL. Terrien had a great year with Montreal, and he's really turned them around. I give a lot of credit to him. I give a lot of credit to your GM. I think they've really brought a new lease on life to that franchise. They've really changed the dynamic and the mentality that they have. And I think
it's really, surprisingly enough,
the culture. They changed the culture of that team.
Almost, and changed it back. Brought a winning culture back.
Yes.
And it's really interesting because there's been lots of Montreal Canadiens franchise players who have come and been part of the back office and the front office, and you'd think that would bring that mentality that they had when they were players.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen, and now you get some fresh faces who are new to the franchise, Terry not so much, but Bergevin, who's going to be restructuring the team and his team.
Yeah.
That's a whole new ball game for them.
You got to give a lot of credit to Subban, who's had a Norris Trophy year. I mean, man, what a season he's had.
And
your rookies.
So much credit to Bergevin, because that's the contract. That's what's doing that.
Yeah. And your rookies, the kids, Gallagher and Galchenyuk, both
in the top
had
five
amazing seasons.
Scoring.
It'll be interesting to see what they do in the playoffs. That'll be a bit of a question mark for Habs fans, I think.
I'm worried for Gallagher. I'm excited for
necessarily...
Galchenyuk because Galchenyuk has turned it on only late.
And he's bigger.
And he doesn't have a target on his head.
Yeah.
Gallagher has put a target on his head.
Yeah.
He is on everyone's radar.
Yeah.
He's in everybody's grill. Like, they know to watch out for him in the crease.
He's an agitator.
Yeah. Well, and we don't have Yemelin to back up the physicality as much anymore.
Is Yemelin going to be back for the playoffs?
No, he's done. He's done.
Oh, man.
He's done. We got Diaz back, but all of our defense now is essentially offensive, and I still can't believe that Markov hasn't had any games off. I am so upset about this. Like every game, he looks like he's aged a year now. Like give him a day. Just let him sit at home and watch the game, and just like. Let him reset, man. Just give him a second.
Do you think they might give him a couple games off now?
No, I think if Terrien hasn't done it yet, he's not gonna. And it disappoints me because Markov's going to be worn out going into the playoffs.
Markov will also be playing center next game. He might be playing backup goalie. And it's actually interesting that. So okay, we'll both say we were right on this one. We both predicted Montreal would make it, but not do as well as they did.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that they're doing as well as they are based on how Price has played. And not that he's played bad, but he hasn't played great.
He hasn't been the Carey Price that we know he could be.
He's been decent.
Yeah, he's been decent, I agree. And he's definitely had lots of strong weeks, lots of strong sections, but
do you
especially
think
as of late. Well,
do you think he'll turn it on in the playoffs?
I hope so, and I know he has the ability to. I just can't speak to him, and at this stage he's been aware of the problems he's been having for a week, and they're still not solved. So it's not looking good. I definitely have to say that, but that energy in that building at the game one, round one, like that might be all it takes for him to just turn on the switch, and nothing will beat him. So ideally that will happen. I have lots of confidence in his ability. We'll have to find out.
In 5th place, we have the team that is going to be lighting up the CN Tower red every time they score in the playoffs.
No way.
They said they would be doing this today.
Oh my god.
I know. 5th place is the Toronto Maple Leafs, making the playoffs for
It doesn't light up once.
they get shut out in 4 games, don't score a single goal.
It's like I want to know if that even if they get eliminated in the first round, I need to know the exact price of how much it costs to light up the CN Tower.
They get shit.
I mean, let's get this: a Budweiser red light for your apartment costs like $200. So what's the entire CN Tower cost?
They get shut out all 4 games,
Oh.
swept, don't score a single goal.
I would, regardless of what happens to the Montreal Canadiens, which, assuming that conversation happens, Montreal sweeps them.
Yeah.
But in any case, I would be stoked on the playoffs no matter what happens to the
Carey
Habs.
Price, 4-game shutouts.
Oh, man.
But with joking aside, Toronto Maple Leafs make it into the playoffs for the first time in 9 years.
Impressive season. As much as I hate him,
Neither of us predicted that Toronto Maple Leafs would do as well as they did. Hats off to the Toronto Maple Leafs. I said they'd be a bubble team. I said they'd be a bubble team. Okay, that's enough, guys. Thank you. See, they listen to me. I said they'd be a bubble team, but I wasn't confident they'd make it. Although I said they'd probably be in the 8th to the 10th spot. You said they wouldn't, out of reflex more so than anything.
Yeah.
And I don't blame you. So yeah, they've totally surprised us. Neither of us thought they'd do nearly as well as they did.
It's been 9 years since an appearance.
But I
so
will
those
say,
fans deserve it.
I will say this, and the reason I said we're a bubble team, it's about time because they have a good roster.
Yep.
They've had a good roster
A
for
very
a few.
physical roster,
They've
which
had a-
is always good for postseason.
They've had a good roster for a few years now, and honestly, just underperformed. Really, the main thing I think that's really pushed them over the edge, that a lot of people wouldn't predict, is the emergence of Nazem Kadri, who's had just an absolutely
drafted the same year as Tavares, and up until a couple weeks ago is leading the race of players drafted that year.
Yeah, he's had an absolutely lights out season. A lot of people were calling him a bust, that he just wasn't going to be the player people thought that he would. Well, he has shut them up this year. He has had an
2 hat-trick games.
Outstanding season, without a doubt their best player. Kessel obviously has been great. Lupul as injured.
Good enough for Don Cherry to kiss. That's how
That's right.
awesome Nazem Kadri
That was
is.
one of the most awkward moments in the entire season.
Right? But
yeah.
whatever.
Come here, you good Canadian kid.
Don Cherry is just getting senile. You just pretty much let him do stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Don Cherry had a 45-minute conversation with a puck the other day. So I mean, yeah, he's had his day.
Did you see his Twitter story about I can't even remember. He was telling someone to be safe on the road or something.
I think I did.
And the whole freaking time there's, oh my god, it's Don Cherry, and he's like, no, shut up, you're being stupid right now.
Oh yeah.
And they were like, oh my god, can I get a picture with you? And he was like, I can't even speak to you. It's like talking to a brick wall. Like you're in people's way. You're putting people's lives in danger with your car. And he's like, I want to get a picture with you, like in an intersection.
Did you know he doesn't tweet? He calls in his tweets, and somebody does it for him.
Really? And it's so funny because it's done by even the person who tweets it is not a tweeter. Like it's like part 1. It's like there's a book. Each tweet is a chapter.
He dictates his tweets over the phone. Yeah,
so good.
And this is true. I'm not making this up. He actually does this. That's awesome. So yeah, hats off to the Toronto Maple Leafs. They shut us up. Finally made the playoffs. Great for that city. Great for the NHL. Toronto is financially, they're the number 1 team in the league. They make double the money of even the Montreal Canadiens and the Vancouver Canucks. They're worth over $1 billion. I think the only North American sports franchise in any league that's worth over $1 billion.
I'd say the Yankees might be close, but
yeah, that's true. The Yankees are up there as well. But yeah, I remember reading that the other day, and they're just worth so much money to the point where neither.
It's the same. You just have to laugh at the fans.
Neither Rogers or Bell could afford them on their own. They had to join forces to buy them. This is how much money the Toronto Maple Leafs are worth. So it's great for the NHL when Toronto does well, because they are a massive part of the franchise of the league, I should say. So it's good for that city. It'll be great if they go on a long run. I don't know if they will, but I think they could definitely get to the second round, depending on who they play.
Yeah, cool. Good to hear.
6th place, we were both dead wrong with this, and this is the MVP talk here. 6th place is the New York Islanders.
Yeah, unbeliable.
Also known as the New York John Tavares.
And a late emergence for them as well. Like also like the Washington Capitals team that had a bad start or a slow start. And in a lot of people's eyes, a predictable start. But then all of a sudden, you just come out of nowhere, and especially with a suffering New York Rangers team, they took advantage.
Well, the Islanders are not unlike a Winnipeg, a Colorado, an Edmonton. A lot of young talent that's been nurtured, been slowly building up, and a lot of their guys have really turned it on this year. Parento was a great signing by them. He's had a great year.
P.A. Parento plays for the Colorado Avalanche now.
Does he?
Yeah, he was.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, he's not. I'm thinking of Okposo. Sorry,
Okposo. Matt Molson.
Matt Molson. Thank you. Yeah, Matt Molson was the guy to say. Oh yeah, Parento was a great pickup for Colorado.
Yeah, he was great when he was on New York. Yeah, it sucked to see him go.
Parento had a great season with Colorado. Exactly. Okay, but yeah, Okposo has had an amazing year. Grabner amazing year. I still can't believe the Canucks let him go for Mason Raymond. What a terrible decision that was. Grabner's had an amazing year. Okposo, Molson's had a great season. Bunch of the young guys are just merging, coming together at the exact same time now. Obviously, Tavares is largely the reason why they're doing so well, but a lot of people thought that there would be a time where the Islanders would eventually be a consistent playoff team, and I think this is it now. I think they've made that next step, the step we're waiting for the Avs and the Oilers and the Jets of the league to do.
Yeah.
The step those teams haven't quite made yet. The Islanders have finally made it, I think, and I think they're going to be a force for the next few years at least.
They need to do some developing on the back end of the goaltending, which is why I don't think they're going to make it deep. They'll get eliminated because it's either Toronto or Montreal that don't play.
Nabokov's had a great year too, though. He's had a great year.
That's true, yeah. But I don't give it to them in the playoffs.
No, I don't think they'll go deep. That this is their first year in the playoffs in quite a long time. I don't remember how long exactly, but I want to say probably 6 or 7 years. So this is their first time in the playoffs for quite some time. It'll be a learning experience for a lot of the guys on that team. So I'm not expecting them to go deep either. I don't even know if they'll make it past the first round, but I expect them to be a playoff contender now for the next few years at least. As long as Tavares is playing the way he is, they're always going to challenge. So yeah, we were dead wrong there. Great job with the Islanders. 7th place. We're wrong again. We've just been
not only wrong on the Ottawa Senators, we predicted them to be not making the playoffs with a full roster.
Yeah, they made the playoffs with 3 players.
I thought you were 3 players out.
Their bench was like 3 players,
3 guys.
Yeah, that was it. They had 3 guys on the ice at all times. In all joking aside, Ottawa has had an incredible year considering their top defenseman in Karlsson was out all year. Their top goaltender and the top goaltender in the league pretty much all year.
Craig Anderson, yeah.
He was out.
He was out for a long period of time.
And Spezza was out all year as well, their best forward. So pretty much you take the top 3 guys out of any roster in the league, I don't care who you are, and you're going to have a hard time. And Ottawa, not only did they make the playoffs, they had a great season.
Yeah, and actually were contending for a much higher spot until
at what point?
Of late. Yeah,
they've only faltered recently.
However, great news for them. Karlsson is traveling with them
and skating.
And is likely going to play before the playoffs start. Unbelievable, although I will say again that I did call him coming back by the first round of the playoffs at the beginning of the injury.
That's true.
And the last show, I still said he was coming back, and we were like, oh, probably not, but here he is, like an amazing healer.
Who's their GM? Murray, is it their GM, or Melnick? Melnick, I always mix their GM up.
Murray.
It is Murray,
yeah,
right?
It's Murray.
Yeah, he actually said on a radio interview yesterday that he is 100%. Karlsson is the doctors.
That's incredible.
The doctors have cleared him.
You know what? Bionic leg.
I've never heard of a player come back from an injury of that nature this quickly.
They amputated the leg. It's a mechanical leg. You watch. They'll catch him. He'll skate like 50 miles an hour.
Maybe they just cloned him and they've been incubating him for this reason, and they just brought out
a roster full of Karlssons.
He can't actually speak. They tried to interview him. He's like, he hasn't learned English yet. Yeah, so Karlsson is a story. I don't think I can't think of a single time a player's had an injury of this magnitude and come back this quickly. It's usually 8 to 10 months rehabilitation before you're even skating.
Yeah.
He's come back in, 2?
Yeah.
3? So, I mean, a huge thing for Ottawa. Any team that's now playing the Senators are going to be very worried because...
Matt Cook's like, damn, I was sure that was going to work.
Yeah, up until Karlsson's injury, he was the go-to MVP this year. He is one of the top players in the league. Some guys are even putting him up with Crosby now. This guy is the next Lidstrom. He's going to be a Norris Trophy candidate for the rest of his career, probably. And he is one of maybe 3 to 5 players in the NHL that can win a series for you.
Yeah.
That's how good he is.
Yeah.
He completely takes the game over when he's on his game. And to have Karlsson back now, Ottawa might go on a run. I might even put them as my pick as the Canadian team that will go the farthest.
You know, that would be great, too, because they are facing, as it stands, the Boston Bruins in the first round. God, I would love that. And Boston's had trouble with them all year, and the last game of the season for Boston is between them and the Senators.
Really?
So that's the one that got delayed. That's the one that got delayed from the bombing. So,
Chara versus Karlsson.
Big story there. It's going to be excellent. And I'd also like to say that Montreal and Toronto face each other for their last game of the season, and that will likely be a precursor, and not only a precursor, but a decider for who will get home ice.
Yes.
So
Saturday's going to be a good day for
hockey Saturday. Watch it.
Watch hockey. I don't care if you're working. Call in sick.
Well, if you're working at a computer, the CBC streams all of their games for free, and
Yeah.
For those of you who are in cities who don't even get the CBC, CBC only airs the Toronto
Dude,
game nationally. Use the website.
The tree outside my house gets CBC. Like anybody can get CBC.
They took it away though. They took away the people with the bunny ears. And
I know.
They took away CBC from them. You have to get It's brutal.
Well, if you still have bunny ears, it's your own damn fault.
People who are 90, man.
Yeah.
You can't blame them.
They're still in dial-up. Yeah.
And are listening to our podcast right now.
Wait a second. All right, so yeah, we were wrong about Ottawa. We just completely got dominated by the East this year. We were all over the place. The East was just not looking like we thought
Couldn't
it
have
would.
called that. And we'll go briefly down the rest of the list of just teams we thought we would make it. I mean, like the New Jersey Devils, you thought you had to see them making a run, or not a run, but at least contending.
Yeah, well, I want to quickly talk about the Rangers and the Jets.
Oh, sorry, I thought we'd... Yeah, fair enough.
8th place, you got the Rangers. This is an asterisk team with the 9th place Jets, because by the time you hear the next show, the Jets could theoretically, although unlikely, the Jets could still take the final seed if the Rangers lose all of their games.
It's actually... So the scenario right now is Ottawa and New York are tied in points. Ottawa has 3 games left. New York has 2. Winnipeg is 1 point back of both of those teams, but only has 1 game to play. So if Winnipeg loses, they're out. If Winnipeg wins, New York and Ottawa have to lose 2 and 3 games respectively.
Really?
So it's like
the odds of Winnipeg winning are getting in are slim.
It's not going to happen.
Although if that happened, that would be insane.
That would be legendary, and that would be the loudest building for like miles and miles.
We both said the Rangers would make it, but neither of us thought they would have such a poor season.
Yeah, like we saw them towards contending.
You picked them winning the cup.
I picked them winning the cup, the conference, the division, like just taking her down.
And I figured they'd be probably top 3 for sure based on the season they had last year, based on the acquisition of Rick Nash, who actually did have a good year, but Gabrick didn't have a good year. He ended up getting traded. Richards has had a good month. He actually was a third star of the week last week, I believe. So Richards has had a good month coming up to this last show, but the Rangers, man, they've just not had a good season. Nobody could really predicted that or figured out why. They should be doing a lot better than they are.
I'd love to see the Rangers miss it, just because the Jackets are likely going to make it.
Yeah.
The poor Rick Nash.
And Rick Nash, I know what a story. If the Jackets made it and he didn't on the Rangers, that would just be incredible. But yeah, I mean, nobody could have predicted the Rangers having such a poor season. I still think that Tortorella's job could be up for grabs next season, based on their performance this year. Very surprising. We both thought the Rangers would finish quite high, as did most people. A lot of people thought the Nash trade might have screwed them in a way, because they gave up a lot of sandpaper, a lot of depth, a lot of the stuff that really made them have a great playoff run last year.
Well, and Brendan Prust on free agency.
He was huge
as
well.
That's a huge key for them, and they haven't been able to fill that role.
And isn't he a Hab now? Yeah, he's a Hab, right. Yeah, you guys, great pickup for you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of what made the Rangers do really well isn't there anymore, and I mean... It's still surprisingly they did as poorly as they did this year. They should have finished top 3, no problem.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are some factors there. And yeah, it'll be really interesting to see, especially if they get bounced in the first round. Although you never know. Maybe the Rangers are the LA this year. Maybe this is like they just squeak in and all of a sudden they find their legs and go on a tear. They have it in them. I mean, as we said.
That's true.
That's the beauty of the playoffs. You just don't know.
Ability.
Yeah, you just don't know. I mean, that's the beauty. The Rangers could be that underdog now. 9th place are the Jets. I was really gunning for them. I was really hoping they'd make it.
Our prediction's pretty much right, though. Bubble team.
We both said they'd be probably an 8th or a 9th or a 10th seed. Probably not making the playoffs. So we were correct there. We were wrong with the Rangers, but we were correct there. Still, though, I was really rooting for them. I'd love to see the Jets make it.
Me too. And friend of the show, Aaron Gagnon, scored another goal the other day.
Friend of the show.
So third of the season.
Friend of the show.
Third of the season.
Has he listened to the show yet?
No, I don't.
Does he
so.
know who you are?
I don't think so.
He's asked me to stop calling him. Yeah, it's like, how did you get my number? Stop texting me.
What a player to pick too, right?
Yeah.
At least I'm being honest.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, Winnipeg, I mean... One of those young teams. They have so much young talent that's still emerging with Kane, Burmistrov, Bogosian on the back end. It'll happen. You watch. In the next few years, they will be a very, very good team, and I think a top 4 or top 5. It'll happen eventually. They're just kind of like an Oilers. They just haven't really made the jump that the Islanders have yet. They haven't really found that next gear.
They need to fill it a little more depth as well, I think.
Yeah.
But they've already got the goaltending as well.
That looks great. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not surprising the Jets finished where they did. But at the same time, it's too bad, because it would be great for that city, and as you said, their arena would just probably have exploded if they made it. But I think next year I think they'll make it. I think that'll be their their jumping off point. They
We'll
will
have
they
to
will
see.
do the Islanders thing next year.
Hopefully.
With the whole season. We'll see if that happens. But I think they're close. They're very, very close to becoming a playoff team. 10th spot, both really wrong here. New Jersey.
Yeah, and it's so I jumped ahead earlier, but yeah, the Devils.
Surprising, man. We thought they'd both make it for sure.
Yeah, and
Based on how they did last year.
exactly. It's just when they lost Zach Parise, there was a lot of questions up in the air, but the rest of the roster stepped up to the plate and took care of things.
Clarkson had a great
or
year.
so we thought.
Initially had a great year.
And so the team somehow makes a late collapse, and they're not going to make the playoffs.
Kovalchuk was injured for quite a while. That didn't help them. And Brodeur, honestly, this is probably the first year I've seen him where he hasn't looked elite.
Yeah.
He's been good, but this could very well be his final season. I wouldn't be surprised if he hung the skates up after this season.
Yeah, almost ended it on 666
I
wins.
know.
He won a game. And he was so mad, he texted me. He was like, they went to 667.
Damn it. You guys, you got to do it for Marty. But yeah, I know it's very surprising about New Jersey. Neither of us could have predicted they would have missed it this year. Disappointing year for those guys. I think this was a one-off. I think there may be a team that suffered from the shortened year. I think they'll be contending again for it next year. The only question with them, though, is with what goaltending.
Yeah.
Maybe Luongo ends up there.
There you go.
Because they're going to need a goalie. Although there's lots of goalies in the open market, it's going to be a goalie free-for-all next year, even with Kiprusoff retiring. You got Bernier on the open market. You got... Ben Bishop could possibly sign somewhere else. Enroth. Miller is probably going to get traded. That's going to be the big one.
Yeah.
Miller's probably going somewhere else. Not probably. He's guaranteed. He's out of there. Miller's gone. Speaking of which, 11th spot, Buffalo. Finishing a little higher than we thought they would. Both of us predicted Buffalo would be missing it this year. They finished in 11th. Not super surprisingly, just don't really have the deep team. They were a train wreck this year. Just a horrible season. They just sold the farm at the trade deadline and had a pretty bad year. I mean, not surprising. We both predicted they'd miss the playoffs. And we both actually predicted they'd probably finish lower than they did.
And we both also predicted they would fire Lindy Ruff.
We did. That was we were right on all counts there. One of the few bright spots for us in our predictions in the Eastern Conference.
You had to see it coming. It was an inevitable collapse.
Yeah, Buffalo, they just they have to go through a bit of a rebuild now. And I think that the Miller thing will be big for them. They're probably going to get, not probably, they will get a lot in return for Miller. So I think that will help them a lot. And they may get a decently high draft pick. Obviously, a really deep draft this year. They're not going to get top 5 probably, but they will. That will help them. But yeah, so not surprising for Buffalo. We were correct there. We were wrong here. 12th place, Philadelphia.
Yeah, the Flyers should have made it.
What happened there?
Giroux, come on, buddy. What you doing? Ignite your team. I really think Jágr... The loss of Jágr is bigger than people realize because he was such a mentor to Claude Giroux, and they had such a great relationship on and off the ice that I think it was just one season too early for Giroux to lose that kind of mentorship.
Yeah. No, they were great together, and everyone was really shocked how Philadelphia ended the season. Probably no one more than Philadelphia fans themselves. I mean, Philly should have easily...
Brzgalov dropped the ball this season,
so. They're saying they might buy him out in the offseason, and that might be a destination for Luongo as well. Philly... I think this was an aberration for them. I think they suffered from a shortened season. I'm pretty much guaranteeing you they'll make the playoffs next year. But they got to figure their goaltending out. And there'll be a lot of questions asked in the offseason. A very disappointing year for Philadelphia. So we were both wrong there. Both wrong again. Wrong again in 13th. Carolina finished 13th. We both predicted they'd finish in a playoff spot, probably 6th or 7th, but we figured they'd finish in a playoff spot.
Cam Ward, an excellent goalie.
The Stahl brothers.
You have
Semin.
The pickup of Semin.
Who had a great year for them.
Thought there was going to be a lot of chemistry going on there. Carolina is bringing up Jared Stahl, so there will be 3 Stahl brothers playing together. So that's kind of cool.
But they really played poorly the second half of the season because the first half of the season, if I remember correctly, they were doing well. Spot. Yeah. So I mean, it was only the second half of the season that things sort of just fell apart for them.
Well, you'll have to look at this season series between Washington and Carolina because that's probably going to be a big reflector on Washington's late surge. They didn't play a lot of games against Carolina until over halfway through the season.
That's true. Carolina was in third up until March, pretty much.
Yeah, there's been three different division leaders for that division this season. Yeah.
So they probably are going to be happy about realignment as well.
Yeah.
So an aberration for Carolina. They're a better team than 13th, and I think they'll probably be challenging for a playoff spot again next year. Maybe only as a bubble team. But, I mean, they had a really disappointing year, much like Philadelphia, and even like the Rangers. So they're going to have a lot of stuff to figure out in the offseason.
Yeah.
14th, we got Tampa Bay. We both said they wouldn't make it, even with Stamkos being Stamkos and tearing it. That's not a surprise. Tampa's just a mess. They got goaltending issues. They got depth issues.
Yeah, not really a lot.
They got a lot to figure out
Just
there.
a mess.
Yeah, and then 15th overall. I predicted they would make it this year based on how well they played last year. We got Florida. You said they wouldn't, so you were right. I was dead wrong. I thought Florida, based on how they played last year, not really having much of a lineup change. I didn't think they would be, I didn't think they'd have a great year. But
to give you credit, I'm pretty sure I called them a bubble team or a low bubble team.
I called them a bubble team as well, but I called them that it was.
You had a lot of faith in Versteeg. I remember you just mentioning his name quite a few times.
Yeah, it was between.
He didn't have that
I said it was
season.
between them and Winnipeg as my 8th pick. I was like between the two of them. I think as the 8th seed sneaking in. Winnipeg caught close, but Florida just tanked. And I mean, they played like the Florida Panthers of old. I don't know what's going on with that franchise right now. They should have done a lot better this year than they did. So we'll see what happens with them in the offseason. Moving on to the West. A little more appropriate to what we thought would happen.
Yeah,
Chicago,
easier to predict, much easier.
Yeah, Chicago finishes first overall. We both said they'd obviously be a top seed. No surprise that they finished first, but I don't think any of us could have predicted that they would have gone on
the
that
tear at the beginning.
That winning streak is
Unreal.
just the stuff of legend. And both of us, I think, are predicting it'll be between them and Pittsburgh in the finals. If either Pittsburgh or Chicago get knocked out before the final round, that will be a massive upset.
Very, very surprising. There's a couple teams that could definitely do it, but those matchups have to happen. Like if it's Chicago-Columbus or New York-Pittsburgh, like that's just like what?
Oh, imagine if the Rangers knocked off the pen.
It would be shocking because of the season, but it wouldn't be because of the rosters. But I mean, like
if Columbus knocked off, if Columbus
there's no
knocked off,
argument there.
Yeah, Patrick Kane would jump off a bridge with 2 beers in hand, chugging them on the way down. Yeah. So Chicago did really well. We both predicted that. Anaheim did incredibly well. You said they would make it. I said they would make it as a high seed, and I got to pat myself on the shoulder here because most of the major sports networks didn't even think they'd make the playoffs. And I was like, dude, look at their roster. They've underperformed seriously for the last 3 years. They have no business missing the playoffs. They have a great team. They've had a great team for years, and now they're finally playing well, largely due to Bruce Boudreau, who's really turned them around. Obviously, Getzlaf had a terrible year last year. He's really turned it around. Perry's been great. Ryan's been great.
Yeah.
Hiller, when he's been healthy, has been great, and when he hasn't, fast.
Come in to save the day.
Yeah,
great stats.
No pun intended. Very nice. Fast has had a great year. He's come out of nowhere and just done great for Anaheim. So yeah, I'm not surprised. Anaheim's got a great team. I think they're going to go on a deep playoff run, and I feel bad for anybody, even Chicago. Any team that would have to play Anaheim is going to be in for a tough ride.
Yeah.
Third place overall, we got Vancouver. You said yes to that. I don't know why I wrote no. You said
just because out of spite, I might have said no.
You said yes to Vancouver. I, of course, being my team, said they would make it as well.
Props to Schneider. He's going to get a nod for the Vezina, probably.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that they made it as high as they did, considering I didn't think they were as deep this year as they have been in previous years. I'm still not totally sold on how deep they'll go in the playoffs.
But your division turned into the Southeast. That's what happened.
I'm still not totally sold on how deep they'll go in the playoffs, but I will say this. This is the first time in this entire run with Gillis as GM in the past 5 or 6 years. This is the first time that I have felt confident going into the playoffs in our goaltending. I've never... As much as I like Luongo in many ways, I've never been that confident in him in the playoffs.
So what about your coaching, though? How many games before Vigneault puts Lou in?
Well, as long as Schneider plays well, it'll be Schneider. I mean, Luongo very well might play his last game in Vancouver tomorrow against Anaheim. A lot of people are thinking that'll be his last game as a Canuck. Unless Schneider craps the bed and Luongo has to step in, which you never know. That's the one upside of not trading Luongo, is at least you got a really great backup. But at the same time, the way Schneider's played, this is the first time going into the playoffs in years where the Canucks have had really stellar goaltending. And the game against Chicago the other night really opened up a lot of people's eyes to being like, okay, if the Canucks play like they did against the Blackhawks, play on all cylinders, because it's not that they had a bad season because they were a bad team this year. I mean, they still finished third.
They just underperformed.
They just underperformed based on their abilities. If the Canucks play the way they did against Chicago, they will be fine against any team. They could very well make it to the conference finals. If they play the way they did, if Schneider continues to play the way he has, they might go on a long run. But they got to keep it up. The Chicago game can't be an aberration. It's got to be consistent.
Yeah.
Obviously, Schneider has to continue to play well. This will be his first time as a starter in a long playoff run, hopefully. But I'm confident in him. I think he's going to have a great playoffs. And as long as things are firing on all cylinders, I think they'll do well. If they aren't, then it might be a really early exit again. So they got to step it up.
Which would be a shame for a lot of players on the roster because this is a lot of their final chance before a rebuild is in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, you can argue maybe they have one more year next year at a cup run.
But the chances drop each year.
But after next year... I mean, next year the average age of the core is 32, 33, 34. After that, though, then you're getting into the mid-30s, and then you're right. You might be looking at a bit of a rebuild. So hopefully this is a good year for the Canucks. We both predicted they would do well, and hopefully a long playoff run. Fourth place, LA. We both predicted they would make it. Although, I gotta say, they had a really rough first half of the season.
Yeah, and a lot of that falls on Jonathan Quick's shoulders, I think.
Yeah, he had a poor year. It's only recently that they've really stepped up their game. Up until March, they weren't even in a playoff spot.
And you gotta hand it to Carter, who can still score goals. He's in fourth in the scoring race right now as far as goals are concerned.
26th goal.
Yeah, and a lot of people would call him solely a playoff performer and
much
stuff like that.
Mike Richards.
So, silencing a lot of critics and coming out to play for his team in the regular season when they needed him a lot.
I mean, we both predicted LA would do well. I even think I said they might go on a cup run again this year, considering their roster is virtually unchanged from last year.
Yeah, and they didn't have to go through they got enough rest before the regular season started. A lot of Stanley Cup winners party their faces off, and by training camp, it's just too fast. So this time around, they got a good break.
But I mean, considering how poorly they did for the first half of the season, it's great to see them in a high spot. They've really turned up their game, especially in March, and they finished around where we thought they would.
Yeah, which is funny actually.
But I mean, at the beginning of the year, we thought they might miss it.
So if they put together a season with that kind of last half they had, they could have very well been contending for first or second.
Yeah. So I think LA is right on the money there. We were right there,
and hot at the right time too.
Yes, and the next team on the list is pretty much carbon copy of what LA just did. 5th place overall. You got the San Jose Sharks. We both predicted they'd make the playoffs,
and we're both predicting they'll leave the playoffs pretty early.
Yeah, probably first round again. First round exit. Imagine if they played LA and had a California series. That would be a great series for California.
Yeah, true.
I mean, I'm not surprised San Jose made it where they did. We both predicted they'd make the playoffs, but they were much like LA. First half of the season, they weren't even near a playoff spot. They really turned it on in March, much like LA, and they found their legs. And it's not surprising, just like LA, they got a talented roster. They should be able to play the way they are, but up until March, they were looking on the outside looking in. So they really turned it on at the last minute.
Yeah,
so
an impressive stretch.
We were right there. 6th place, we were both right. I actually predicted these guys to be my underdog to win the cup. I still think they might be a cup.
I probably would have put them on the bubble, but they did make 6 in the playoffs, the St. Louis Blues.
Yep, St. Louis Blues had another good year. Hitchcock, another good season with them.
Alex Pietrangelo. Unbelievable defenseman.
What a defenseman.
One of the top 2, top 3 in the league in the near future.
David Backes has had a great year for them. Great captain. I wish he was on our team. He's an incredible player. Very underrated player, in my opinion. He's kind of like a younger Shane Doan. He's just got that in him. Got that kind of capabilities. St. Louis is still my underdog for the cup. I'm not saying they're going to win the cup, but I'm saying they're the kind of team that if you don't give them the respect they deserve,
they'll beat you.
They will beat you. And they got the talent to do it. They finished roughly where I thought they would. Same with you. We were both right with where they finished. But yeah, watch out for St. Louis, man. They can challenge anybody right now. Vancouver, St. Louis. Well, actually, as a Canucks fan, I would love to play St. Louis because I know we could beat them. But at the same time, if we go up against St. Louis like we did against LA last year, and sort of we're like, we don't have to worry about this team. They will beat us. So whoever ends up playing the Blues, whether it's the Canucks or another team, watch out, man, because they're a good team. They're gonna have a great run, I think, this year. 7th place. We both said they'd be a bubble team. Realistically, we both said they'd probably make the playoffs considering their roster. They should, but we weren't 100% sold.
Just because they could have been like a New York,
where
you just stack it up and
you just never know.
No chemistry.
7th place, you got Minnesota. They've actually had a pretty rough March. They had a weird season. For the first month of the season, they were way out of it. Like, they weren't even near a playoff spot. Second month, they went on a tear. They were up to 3rd place.
Yeah, they were division leaders. That's right.
Yeah. And then 3rd month, this last month, they haven't done that well either. But considering how well they did in February, that was enough for them, and they secured a playoff spot in 7th place. So we were both uncertain about Minnesota, but we were both, I'd say, probably correct. We assumed they'd probably...
Theoretically, Detroit could take them out, but it's not possible.
It's very
slim.
Very slim. Yeah, so we were both thinking Minnesota would make it, but we weren't sure. So I got to say we were both right there. Minnesota was doing what we thought, but they were a question mark. You just never know. With a team like that, they get so much talent in the offseason. Will it work for them? And it paid off in the long run. I mean, Parise had a great season. I would say Suter will probably be a Norris candidate. I don't think he'll win, but I think he'll be a candidate.
Yeah.
He had a great year as well. So yeah, 7th place Minnesota. We were right there. I don't think they'll go that deep, but we'll see. They could definitely turn it on as well. 8th place.
Nobody called this.
Largely due to Bobrovsky.
The Columbus Blue Jackets making a playoff appearance, probably. It's going to be amazing.
The 8th and 9th spot, just like with the East, are the asterisk spot. There's still a small chance Detroit can knock them off, but a very small chance. They have a slightly higher chance than Winnipeg making the 8th spot. Detroit still could technically sneak into 8th, but it looks like the Columbus Blue Jackets are making the playoffs for the first time. I think, in about 4 or 5 years.
And they still need to get their first playoff win.
Yes, that's true. They got swept in that one playoff appearance.
Yeah, so...
But they had Steve Mason then. Now they got Bobrovsky.
There you go.
So maybe this is the year where they make it past that elusive first round. Probably not, considering they're going to be playing the Blackhawks. I think
they could play the Ducks.
That's true. If they play the Ducks, they might have a chance. Even so, though.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
No.
If they play Chicago, they might not even get a win. But they're the feel-good story of the year, man. The Columbus Blue Jackets did what a lot of teams wish they could have done. They found that momentum right at the right time. They weren't even challenging for a playoff spot up until March. And then Bobrovsky just stood in his head. He was first star of the month not once, but twice. In a shortened season, that is hella impressive.
Yeah.
He'll be a Vezina candidate for sure. He might even win it. I don't know. I'll probably say Anderson.
Rask or Schneider?
I'd actually probably say
Anderson didn't play. I don't play. He played 22 games.
Yeah, his numbers are just so good, though.
Yeah, but like in a regular season, you have to play 25 to qualify.
True. Yeah,
and even if you played like 40 in a
So
regular
Anderson-
season,
so
you don't get it.
yeah.
Like,
Anderson's kind of like a Carlson then. Up until his injuries, he could have been considered.
yeah, I agree with you. His stats are exceptional, and had he played a full season, he would probably win it. It's just like statistically, he won't be chosen.
That's true.
It's just the way it is.
Too bad for him. But yeah, no, Bobrovsky might win the Vezina this year.
Yeah,
I mean,
him, Rask or Schneider will be the contenders.
The one thing I'd say with Columbus and Bobrovsky's Vezina chances are the Vezina is looked a lot like the MVP. I mean, they don't talk about it as such, but I know for a fact that when the media votes for the Vezina, they always keep in mind what he did for his squad, what the player did for his squad.
Yeah.
And because Bobrovsky is the only reason, and I mean only reason, that Columbus is in a playoff spot.
Well, and the New York Rangers roster that they have.
Yeah, that's true. But because of Bobrovsky, that's why they're in a playoff spot right now. So I think because of that, he's going to definitely be a candidate or possible winner of the Vezina. So yeah, great job for Columbus. With the asterisk, there's still a slight chance by our next show that Detroit did indeed knock them off. But it looks like Columbus has secured that spot. Now, Detroit are ninth. We're way off there. We both said they'd make the playoffs for sure. This is their
We did think that age would be a factor, and
they would probably finish lower.
If anything was going to bring them down, it would be that. But all the way to ninth, didn't see that coming. Especially with a talented goaltender in Jimmy Howard, who's not old, and should have had a way better season. That is, to me, what's disappointing about the Detroit Red Wings.
Detroit is up 3-1 in the third right now
Against
LA.
Okay, so there you go. So
And
Detroit,
that would put them 1 point. They are now okay. Asterisk for a reason. Detroit is now in 8th spot.
yeah, no, except games played are now equal. Okay, so there you go.
Detroit. Oh my God. Sorry, Columbus. Detroit is now as of literally 5 minutes ago. The Detroit Red Wings are now in 8th spot, 1 point over Columbus. With that said, Columbus could still make the 8th seed. This will come down to the wire. I'm talking Saturday will define the 8th seed. So Columbus could still do it. Detroit's got to win all their games, just like Columbus has to win all theirs. If either of them wins even one of their next two, then that's it for them. But right now, Detroit is in the 8th seed. We predicted they'd finish probably 5th or 6th or 7th, so we were both wrong.
Oh yeah,
considering how. But there you go. I mean, you take Lidstrom out of the equation. The year he got drafted was the start of their 20-year playoff run.
That's ridiculous.
The year he retires,
it should end.
The year he retires, they almost missed the playoffs and still might miss the playoffs. So that just shows you, man, how important Lidstrom was to that team.
Yeah.
And Detroit now finally in maybe a bit of a rebuild. They've been the New York Yankees of the NHL for many years, just consummate winners. Nothing but winning with that organization, and now barely squeaking into 8th seed or possibly missing it for the first time in 20 years. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens with Detroit in the offseason, because whether they even make it or not, I don't think they're going to go on a deep run. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with them. Moving along, because we're running a little low on time, about 10 minutes left. 10th place, Dallas. We both said no.
Fair enough. No
both
goaltending, no defense.
They sold the farm at the trade deadline.
Farm at the deadline, and even the talent they still had after that, they got rid of Michael Ryder. Really, they just kind of dismantled and have to rebuild. They forced themselves into a rebuild.
Yeah, so we were right there. Phoenix missed the playoffs this year. We were right there.
Everyone would call that.
It was surprisingly even made.
Oh, look, the West
year.
is easy. Look, okay, so Phoenix out, predicted. Calgary out, predicted. Edmonton out, predicted.
Although, wait, got to stop with Edmonton.
Teams.
We both said this might
could have been their year.
We both said this might be Edmonton's sort of Islanders year, where they finally made that step and got into the 8th seed. Looks like we'll have to wait a season. It might be next year for them now. So Edmonton are out, but we were both thinking probably they wouldn't make it, so we were kind of right there.
Yeah.
The next one's wrong. So
Oh yeah, this one was epic just because of.
can we just quickly, before going into this, we were right with Phoenix, we were right with Edmonton, but could we just say how right we were with Calgary as well?
Oh, yeah.
Because some people still thought Calgary might challenge for a playoff
There's
spot.
nobody on that roster. There's
No, man.
nobody. There's a Ginla.
Nope. There's Kiprusoff. Nope, retired. There's Camilleri. Oh, he's probably getting traded. There's Tanguay. Nope, he's probably getting bought out. So pretty much Calgary's rebuilding in this offseason, which they should have done 5 years ago. So we were right in the fact that they missed the playoffs, but I can't believe a lot of people actually thought they'd make it this year.
Yeah, no, me neither. I was very surprised.
Calgary has to rebuild, and they got to do it now.
Yeah.
They should have done it ages ago.
Yeah.
So now, then Edmonton in 13th. You got Nashville finishing in 14th. We were both wrong there. We both
Strictly Pecorine.
We both thought Nashville would probably be a 6th or a 7th seed, but we both thought Nashville would make it. They've been a consummate performer every year for the last 5 or 6 years. They have a great coach, a great system. We figured they would, not go deep in the playoffs, but at least be in a playoff spot by now.
Yeah.
14th overall for Nashville.
Unbelievable. And like I said, Pecorine just
would you
dropped
say,
the ball
Would you
this
say
year.
that's largely due to him?
Him and surprised, a lot of people were surprised in how much Suter leaving affected Weber.
Oh, dude, Weber. I predicted Weber would have a Norris candidate year this year, and I was way off with that.
He's not the same player without Suter.
He's got to do something to his game to alter that to make himself effective.
Yeah.
And they got to change their system because, a defensive system with a guy like him, you got to let him use his shot.
But they don't really have a lot of offense either. And
No,
they know
they're-
that. They play a defensive
Dude, their
style
leading
game,
goal
but-
scorer for the last 5 years, Martin Erat, gets traded at the deadline.
you
Granted,
go.
for an amazing prospect, but and who's looked scary no less, actually. Forsberg.
Well, they'll need him.
For Nashville's looking really good. He's going to be a great player. So yeah, really surprising about Nashville. We were way off there, but considering how we were right from the 10th to the 13th spot, we'll give it to ourselves there. The 15th seed, I said they'd be a bubble. They might be able to make the jump, but I didn't think they'd make it.
I was pretty confident. This was my young team that I picked, that would have had an emergence over, say, Edmonton, strictly because I liked Matt Duchesne, Paul Stastny, David Jones. They picked up Parento, so I really thought that roster was going to be a lot stronger. And
Colorado finishing dead last in the West.
But a lot of reasons behind that. I mean, we heard in the dressing room, who was it that called
Jaguar.
out? Jaguar just saying, and Jaguar, an excellent goaltender and a Stanley Cup winning goaltender.
Yep, and an MVP, Conn Smythe, no less.
When
as well.
someone says that their players are scoreboard watching and not
checked out for the season.
yeah, then that's a scary thing, especially when those guys are very talented, and that's what hurt Colorado.
That team's young. They got some growing to do. I don't think I put them quite up there with Winnipeg or Edmonton as a team that's almost about to emerge. They got more growing to do than I'd say either Edmonton or Winnipeg. And yeah, they got to figure some stuff out. I think the O'Reilly thing really messed with them. He very well may get traded in the offseason just to fix that problem, which will give them a great return. But at the same time, Colorado's got a lot of...
Like, what kind of season has he had, right? It's been
but
average.
Teams always overpay for young talent. That's just the way it seems to be. Like, young talent is just a gold rush for most teams. Like, they'll just do it. You know?
Yeah, I mean, you have
especially
to,
in the salary cap era.
You have to roll the dice, exactly. I mean, if you pass up and he does become a superstar, then
Which he could.
You're in trouble. Yeah,
but yeah, Colorado's got a lot to figure out. They're way farther away than an Edmonton or a Winnipeg, in how close they are to making that jump. So yeah, Colorado's got a lot of figuring out to do. So overall, I think we were pretty much correct with the West. We pretty much nailed that one. The Eastern Conference was just all over the place. We couldn't have predicted half of those finishes, so all over the place.
Well, the Canadian team's resurgence was incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not looking as hopeful now with Winnipeg on the bubble,
but seeing Edmonton, seeing Montreal, Toronto, and Ottawa do as well as they did, considering how poorly they did the previous years, is really amazing for Canadian teams.
Yeah. And on the Winnipeg Jets, I kind of wanted to cover a little bit of Claude Noel as well, because a new coach who had an opportunity to make a team or make the playoffs with a young roster. I wouldn't necessarily blame the Jets season on him. In fact, I would say that based on looking at paper, the Jets would probably finish at about 9th in the East anyways. Mm-hmm. But
I think he's done well with what he's been given. He's just waiting. Some of those guys just got to grow a little more.
Yeah.
That's just...
I agree. The one comment I would have towards him would be that he has a pretty negative attitude, especially when addressing the media, and I could see how that would kind of irk you as a player. Like, if that's the attitude that he brings to the arena, it's kind of brutal. Now, to be fair, in a lot of the interviews, the Winnipeg media doesn't seem to be asking very good questions either, so he gets fed up pretty quickly.
He has a better attitude with the media than Duncan Keith does, though.
That's very true, yeah. Duncan Keith, for those of you who don't know, made some comments that he probably is regretting.
Yeah.
And still,
sexist comments that are very uncommon for a professional athlete, especially a hockey player, to make. Pretty much calling the female reporter useless and never having played the game, she shouldn't be talking about it.
Yeah, and it was really a shame to also see that not really a great apology on Twitter, kind of like, well, it's her fault. Like I'm allowed to be grumpy after a loss like
it's
that.
funny.
And
Some of
she's the hometown reporter.
You don't listen to 1040 as much as I do,
No.
but she's a 1040 reporter. Some of her coworkers actually did say she probably asked the question poorly, like she didn't word it as well as she could have, considering, and she knew how frustrated he was, so she kind of brought it on herself.
But she laughed a little bit too, like adding to the animosity of the rivalry, right?
She kind of brought it on herself a little bit, and she did shrug it off as not being a big deal, and it's not as big a deal as it should have been. Like, people were blowing it a bit out of proportion, but still,
had anybody asked that question, he would have made a comment.
Yeah, but still, at the end of the day, it doesn't excuse what he said.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a guy like Keith, especially as good of a player as he is, one of the best defensemen in the world, he should be watching what he's saying a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
So there you go, man. We end the season on a high note. We had a great show today. I really had a blast doing the season with you, bud.
Yeah, it was great.
It was a lot of fun. We were obviously super stoked to be bringing the playoffs to you guys and be talking playoff hockey with you.
We will cover a little bit of the weekend that happens this upcoming weekend on our first playoff show, but pretty much just so we can establish how
probably open the show with that.
Well, because like
just because Detroit, Columbus, like what's going to happen with that?
New York, Ottawa.
Yeah, so I mean there is going to be a bit of juggling to go. So our next show we'll be talking about how the season finished, just for those bubble teams that are all sort of the Astros.
Well,
teams.
yeah, and how the positions got set up, like if, how Montreal ended up with the home ice or not home ice against the Leafs and what have you.
Yeah, but bud, it's been a great show.
Yeah.
Very fun.
Audio handshake.
The audio handshake. We just want to give a big shout out to Patrick and all the crew at the radio station. They're the radio station that hosts the show based out of Montreal. Make sure to check them out at theradiostation.blog.com.
And don't forget to subscribe to the Bandwagoners on iTunes. You can automatically download our shows every week.
And let's get stoked, boys and girls. It's playoff hockey starting next show. My name's Andy Cole.
And my name's Justin Boniface. Thanks for listening.
Have a good night.